in a world that from the outside looks terrifying and so unpredictable, how do we come alive? How do we stay awake? How do we evolve? Well, the answer is much closer than you think. I'm Tryshe Dhevney. Welcome to the podcast, The Gods We Come to Be. In Season 1, my friend Jenn Savage and I will be exploring ancient wisdom as an applied experience, where sound and authentic voice, manifestation and consciousness converge. I will share the 5 prime laws of manifestation. Now, for clarification, when I say the word law, I'm not talking about human governance, where we have laws that guide and control. I'm talking about universal laws, which is the awareness of the harmonious conditions we can use to create that level of harmony throughout the universe. I'm excited to have you join us for these thoughtful, vulnerable, and grounded conversations as we're reminded of the gods we have come to be. Before the world told us who to be or how to be, we knew. Welcome to Episode 1 of The Gods We Come to Be. To begin our return to wholeness, we will reframe how we live our daily lives through a mystical lens. So the question becomes, how do we manifest our individuality? How do we trust ourselves? How do we know our own truth? We listen to the inner voice and follow the path of sound as it expedites our return to the divine masterpiece we already are. Greetings and welcome. My name is Tryshe Dhevney, and I'm here with my dear friend, Jenn Savage. This is our inaugural podcast, and I'm so thrilled that you're joining us to be a part of art's really an exploration and discovery. Every Thursday we get together and we talk about life, about what's going on in each other's lives, but also about the work and how the work is evolving and how each of us is evolving. And I have to say, this work is at a whole other level of understanding of who I am as a human being. And believe you me, it's all about how I understand myself. I'm not giving any information that is a truth for you, but this is, in fact, more of a discovery of my own based on a journey I've been on for the last 25 years. And so we've talked about doing a podcast. I think my concern was always, is there anybody out there that would find resonance with this material? I felt it was almost a closeted mystical experience that I was a little hesitant to share with the world. And because I think I was still trying to earth it, ground it, make it my own, and as well as understand it as it applies to real life. So what was your experience in exploring this level of work?
Well, I think what you're talking about is so important because I always felt a little weird. Like, I feel like I kind of came in with an awareness, whether we call those psychic gifts or just an ability to know things. Like, ever since I was a small child, I just knew what I was seeing, and the distortion in that field wasn't my truth or the whole story.
Right.
So from a very young age, I feel like, I learned about astrology, and it's like the door just kept opening for me, and the mystical component of it really opened up when I met my Sufi sheikh. It was like, oh, there's like, I'm not the only one in the world having this experience. Like, I'm not uniquely strange and weird. And then it's like you find your people, and then they're, and we'll talk about life and vibration and the resonance that it brings together, So meeting you, 7, 8 years ago now, like, some of the big stuff happened early. And now what's so fascinating is like the nuance, the subtleties, and how my beingness is emerging from the chaos of my conditioning, and how this is the playing field we're now meeting on.
And I think experience is the launch, because from experience comes awareness. From awareness moves into knowledge and then to wisdom. Well, I think I'm now moving through those cycles on a regular basis. But this came about because of my experience 25 years ago when I was told I had about 9 months to a year or so to live. And I met that moment in an unusual way. I sat in the doctor's office. My husband was with me. We were holding hands, and the doctor gave me that news. And in that moment, I just felt, I guess you could say it was a surrender. But as I look at it, it was, I think, more of an expansion of what's possible. Though I didn't understand what that looked like. Right. But the possibility could not be named because it wasn't a part of my intellectual understanding. Right. But I surrendered and I said, well, okay, if you're going to do a chemo, it was all experimental. I gave them permission to experiment on me, and I started to, do the injections. But prior to that first injection, I went shopping and I met a crystal bowl. And that bowl is what changed how I experience myself in ways that I can't name right now. But as I played the bowl, I was enchanted by the sound. I loved what was happening to me. I forgot all about any condition that I may have had. I wasn't even interested in healing because I'd already accepted I was dying. So I bought the bowl, I go home, and I vocalized with the bowl. And I do it every day. Now, the vocalizing I wasn't singing words. I was just making sound. I was moving in between the different notes, playing with the waters and the echo off the shower curtain and the tiles. I was just in heaven. And though the dose of the chemical therapy was being moderated and then lower dosage down the line, within 4.5 months, I was completely cured of this disease. I didn't know what to think, but the doctor was very careful with me. He said they can call this a spontaneous healing. It will come back. You do not eradicate millions of viral load in 4.5 months. So don't think that this is the end game for you. This is going to come back. So I said, okay, thank you. And I just kept playing my bowl. And I kept vocalizing with my bowl for the sheer pleasure of playing the bowl and finding nuances in the harmony of the sound. Little did I know, I was unlocking the most ancient pathway to understanding how to manifest what we are designed to be. And I say what because that comes before who. The what is energy. And I didn't realize then, as I understand today, and we're going to talk more about it as we discuss the 5 prime laws of manifestation, is that I was engaging the first prime law and the second and the third. I had no idea what this was called, but I felt the outcome, and the potential that was within me was then materialized. I also knew I wasn't an anomaly, a medical anomaly, nor did I think I was a miracle, as many in the world would call it. So I needed to find what happened biologically. Though there was some studies available to us, there was one in particular, a study out of France, where a gentleman was exploring the impact of sound on the HeLa cells, which were the original cancer cells. And he experimented with various instruments and found none of them had an impact on the cell structure until he used his voice. And when he used his voice, the cell walls started to vibrate and fibrillate. So then he did a next level of this research and had women with cancerous tumors. And he had them all vocalize the sound of ah for a month, a half hour a day. And at the end of that study, he measured, they all did the MRIs again to see what was happening with their mass. And all of them had disappeared. There was one woman who left the study halfway through. She wanted to have the surgical procedure. But as they opened her up, they realized that the mass was already in a state of disintegration. So what this gentleman, his name is Fabien Maman, the study is in his book, The Role of Music in the 21st Century. And he outlines what happened and how the study was like. He even had Kirlian photography, which is amazing to watch these cell walls move. But he surmised that the human voice carries consciousness. And the quality of that consciousness is the quality of one's own essence. And that got my attention. It's like, what's consciousness? Can I order some? How does this happen? Something that's so ephemeral, something that's so indescribable, and something I can't tangibly draw upon and hold and touch. So that started me on this journey of finding out why I got well in such a short period of time, and B, the role of my voice in this journey. And that's where we connected, talking about your journey with your voice and sound. And
just, we're talking about divine timing, right? It's like the thing you need will show up when you're ready for it, which is part of the way these laws operate. And I had just had thyroid surgery.
That's right.
Months before I met you. And, a bit of my story is, I was so shut down. Like, to be heard was dangerous for me, right? So I became the silent observer. And I couldn't even read out loud in class when the teacher called on me. Like, my throat, I have been shut down in my voice. And so I just feel like a little bit like a turtle in absorbing what can my nervous system take. Like, I've heard you talk about these concepts for years. And I'm like, yeah. This is her work I'm supporting her with, but it doesn't really apply to me, right? And then slowly over time, like this embodiment of my own self in the way that my voice is now free to have conversations in a visible way, just the journey that I've taken. And it started, months after I'd literally just had my throat opened up by the surgeon. So the timing and the way that the work has worked me has just been at the pace I could take it in. And my nervous system had a lot of trauma. So it literally was like a thimble. Like, okay, great. I'll go back home into my life. And then, okay, I'll have another little sip. And it's evolved into this, amazing, exquisite, as we started with, exploration. We're weekly. We're in the inquiry. We're observing how consciousness is impacting our lives and how that changes everything we do.
Mm-hmm. When you mention voice, and I offer a class or something like that, people scatter because the terror that we have around the sound of our voices is indescribable. And most of us have spent a life swallowed and diminished.
Every self-betrayal, every time we made something outside of us more important than that little tiny voice that was trying to guide us, and the evolution it takes for us to come into relationship with that deep vulnerability. And as we will discuss over these podcasts, your absolute freedom.
Not only your freedom to be who you are, but the discovery of who you came to be. Because most of us don't have a comprehension of who we came to be. We sort of have a vision. I'd like to be an architect. I'd like to be a teacher. I'd like to be loved. I'd like to be needed. I'd like to be good. That was my vision. I wanted to be a good girl. In fact, it wasn't a girl. No, I take that back. I wanted to be a good person. For some reason, that really resonated with me. So the journey of discovery it takes some circuitous routes. So I too was hidden and afraid, and often reliant on how the world saw me. And it wasn't until I could turn that around and be seen by me from the inside, without any concern of how the world is going to respond, right?
And that is the journey of the mystic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is really the conversation we're having.
Yeah.
And it won't resonate with everybody, and that's okay. But for those who know there is something more, that little thing in them that's been guiding them, it's like, you're welcome here. This space is for you. That's what this whole exploration and this next series of conversations is really about. How to be awake in a world that from the outside looks totally chaotic and unpredictable and terrifying.
Well, and I love how these 5 prime laws addresses that very thing. Where we think it looks random, where we think it looks like we're at the effect of everything, the discovery through these laws, the prime laws of manifestation, puts the journey back in your court. This is your life to live. Now, I've heard that phrase, and I understand I'm in control of my destiny, yin, yin, and yana. But I didn't understand any of those words because I was looking at it from the outside in. What does it look like to others? And the real impact was, how was I shaping my life with every breath, with every word? So these prime laws cover that journey to individuality, that journey that allows us to discover ourselves at such a deep level, that allows us to have a mystical experience of who we are, a co-creative experience of who we came to be. And the healing that I had, and I'm almost cautious and careful to use that word healing because it means different things to different people. In my case, healing was an eradication of symptoms. Everything was gone. But that's not always the case. Healing could be so subtle to really such a refined level that if you're not able to listen and feel what that is, you might miss the miracle that's already happening. And I use that word loosely, but also carefully, because the miracle is if I chose to listen.
Well, and it's every breath we take, like every moment, right? And that's what being in the present means, available to what's here without resistance or wishing it were different. And there's one piece that I would just have been thinking about since we started this part of the conversation, and that's like, knowing is no longer enough. Right. Because we've all read the books. We all intellectually have some kind of understanding of our path or what resonates as our truth. The difference that we're talking about is that journey from knowing to embodying. And it's not an easy journey. It's not an easy path to travel. But the embodiment of the knowing is really what the mystical path is about.
I'm fingering this book. It's my love. As you can see, I didn't tidy things up. This is a funky read. By the way, it is called The Story of Infinity. And it's the collected works of Greg Tiffin, a teacher I met when I was in my 20s, and he since passed on. And he would be the first to say he's just another interpreter of these extraordinary mystical laws. But his work has been profound in my life. And he writes this sentence: mysticism per se has never been designed for the masses. It is designed for those who have a spiritual desire, willingness, intelligence, and tenacity to understand what it means and what it is meant to do. Now, I read those words and I can just gloss over them. I know what the word meant, but put it together in a mystical conversation, and now you start realizing we're talking about something that is so intangible and cannot be known intellectually, must be experienced in the landscape, the inner landscape of one's own life experiences. And this is a tale, if you will. He uses Genesis, but it's not the Genesis of a typical Bible that a modern Bible. He uses the Lamsa Bible of the 9th century, and it is written in Aramaic. So the language in Aramaic is much different from the way we interpret and read and translate. For instance, the first 2 words of the Lord's Prayer is Our Father. Well, in Aramaic, it is Avun. And what that means is the breathing life of all. Very different interpretation. The breathing life of all, the divine, the all. And having that understanding that this is a universe that is infinite, that has never begun, we have never begun, and we will never end. So that's where this book started to touch me. And at first I read a little bit and put it down. And I read a little bit more. A couple of years went by. I read a little bit more, a little bit more. And then one day I was ready to read. And I became willing to decode what, because I have to say I was raised in a faith. I was raised Catholic, and I had to divorce the God of my childhood understanding because it was punitive, it was out to get me, did not like me. And so I could not abide by the social standard that was expected of me as a young girl growing up in the 50s and 60s. But this code book and the interpretation I'm finding, and my maturity, my hope is that you will join us on this journey because it's fascinating. It talks about the laws that really guide this universe. And I was fascinated to learn at a mystical level. Law doesn't mean an edict. Law means the state of harmony when everything is in its resonant state. It produces harmony. That becomes a law. So when we are operating from these principles, these 5 prime laws of manifestation, it changes the dynamic, internal, external, spiritual. It's all spiritual, but it's perpetually unlocking truths within each of us. I invite you to join us on this deep dive, if you will, into the world of sound and into the world of energy and into these 5 prime laws. We will explore each law, and then we will be also exploring the dynamics of the human voice, because all of our voices have been altered, for the most part, by life experience. And it's the quality of that voice that is able to move the mountain, if you will. But if the quality of that voice is lessened, if we are not speaking from the quality of who we know we are, and instead we are diminishing that and pinching that off and being restricted and hesitant and tiny and spiteful and sarcastic, and all these ways that we diminish ourselves, then the quality of our manifested experience is going to reflect that. We will cover the voice as well as the crystal bowls, because they play a huge role in my evolution. I don't use the alchemy crystal bowls in the same way that others do. I don't hear them the same way. I don't talk with them. For me, they're sentient. I'm excited to share how they can be optimized and magnetize the energy of who each of us are as just another extraordinary voice, as an extraordinary bowl, a piece of music, a symphony. And our voices have capacity beyond our understanding. So join us as we walk this path. Thanks again for joining us. For more information, please visit soundshifting.com. There's a free gift waiting for you. We look forward to seeing you for our next episode. And in the meantime, don't forget the God you came to be.